Hi guys, and welcome back to episode 8 of the Budget Scrambler build. So last time we took her for the test ride, which went really well, really enjoyed ourselves, but we got it a little bit muddy. So I've cleaned it all now and we've got to start thinking about paint. So this episode is going to cover stripping it down and preparing it all for the paint work. So this episode is going to be a little bit of a step backwards. Last time we took the bike out and we were really impressed with how it handled, and it's time to start thinking about paintwork. So because of all the rust on the frame when we initially got it, I'm going to need to get to that and wheel it all off before we can start painting. So now I'm going to go ahead and start stripping things down to individual components, and I'll be able to prepare them and clean them up ready for paintwork. So taking it for that test ride yesterday, I got mud flung everywhere. I cleaned most of it off, but obviously not the bits that I was undoing the bolts from because they were all covered in mud. So yeah, but I've got them all off now and I'm at the stage where I want to remove the engine. Now on this particular bike, the engine is mounted using the swing arm pivot bolt. So if we were to just knock that out, our swing arm would fall out and the bike would fall on the floor. We don't want that. So what I'm actually going to do is connect it to the joist in the roof. I'm going to hoist it up there using a bit of rope or something like that, and then the back end will be swinging around and I should be able to knock it out without everything collapsing. Fingers crossed. So I've stripped down the bike now and I've made several piles. I've got a pile for anything that needs filler work, a pile for anything that's going black, and also a pile for aluminium, which I want to do a brush finish on. So I've got my frame now all stripped down, and I need to prepare it ready for its prime coat, along with the other couple of parts. So the next step is to go across with the wire wheel on the angle grinder and just strip off any rust, any black paint that's still remaining. This is quite a handy step because whilst I'm doing that I can be checking out the welds and checking that they're all strong. So I'm going to use a couple of different wire wheels to strip off the rust and paint. This is what I tend to use for the general larger areas like the tubes, and then I use something like this just to get in any areas that are a little bit fiddly. Now obviously you could get this shot blasted and that would be a lot quicker, but it'd also be more expensive. And this is a budget build. So I'm going to strip it off with the angle grinder, and I've had no problems with it in the past, so it should be all good. Okay, so several hours later and I'd say I am 98% of the way done. That last 2% lays in the cracks and crevices of this frame. I can't get to them with the wire wheel. So I'm going to draft in another tool, which is this little guy here. He is a needle scaler. So basically what this does is it's an air hammer attached to an airline, and it will fire these needles backwards and forwards, and it will allow me to get in these tight gaps and just chip off any rust or paint that's left over. Apart from that, the only thing I've got to do is remove the VIN plate. So I'm just going to drill out the rivets on that and pop that off, and then we should nearly be there in terms of getting it ready for our primer coat. Right, so I've just finished up stripping all of the paint and rust off of various parts. I've got my side stand and my footrest, some engine mounts up there as well as the frame, and I'm now going to be painting them. So what I've got today is a compressor fed spray gun. It's just a very basic setup, and I'm going to spray it all with red oxide as our base coat. This is just the first lot of parts that we get in primed. I will probably primer a second lot as well. So our base coat is all dry now, and it's time to start putting a top coat on there. For this I've got a satin black 2K paint. The bike will predominantly be black, but the places where it will really shine will be the tank and the side panels. We're going to be doing those with a little bit of checkerboard and a little bit of silver as well. Sort of something reminiscent of 70s, 80s motocross bikes, but with a little bit of 60s inspiration. I haven't quite worked it out yet, so I'm going to be making it up as I go along. So I painted up my first batch of parts in black, and they're just waiting to dry. It's quite cold today and I've done a thick coat, so it's going to take a while, which means I need to come up with something else to do in that time. Which brings me on to the race plates. I'm going to have to start preparing these for paint now, and I'm not a good enough fabricator that I can make these totally unwarped and nice and smooth. So I'm going to have to get a little bit of filler involved. I'm going to take these home and fill up anywhere that needs it, just sand it down until it's nice and smooth. After that I'm going to do a high build primer on it, and the high build primer basically allows me to get it even smoother because, like it says in the name, it's high build, it's thick. I can sand it down and get out any little dents or divots in there. So after filling and sanding right into the middle of the night, I finally completed the side panels. So they're lovely and smooth now. Working at home, I've got a really small space, so I wasn't able to get my normal camera in there. I had to use the GoPro, which means I couldn't really explain what I was doing. So I'm going to explain to you now. Basically, the idea behind this is I always go in with the filler very roughly first and just smear it on and take it down with a harsh grit sandpaper, something like a 240, and that will give you your basic shape. Once you've got the basic shape, it's a case of using a bit of filler and refining it with a much finer grit paper, say something like a 400. After that, it is a case of repeating the process but also adding in the filler primer. And what that filler primer allows you to do is it sort of makes a gradient map. So you will be able to see any spots that are a high point. When you sand that, they will come up as metal. Any that are a low point will come up as filler. And the bits in between will be the primer. So that really allows you to work out where you need to add more filler and how you need to sand it so that you get a nice, smooth, even finish. So the first batch of items that went for satin black are all dry now, and they're looking really, really smart. I've got the second batch drying behind me, so that's good. I'll be ready to crack on when I come in on Monday. I can't tell you how long this has taken me to strip all this rust off by hand and sand the panels into the right shape. It really has been a labour of love, I suppose. Obviously, I then shrink it down into what can be viewed in 10 minutes, and you guys get to see that. But a lot of work has gone into this bit. So the next thing I need to start looking at is preparing any aluminium parts. I need to be brushing those up and stripping off any paint off of them and get them to that raw matte aluminium look. After that, I should be able to start reassembling the bike once everything's cleaned, and then hopefully that will give me a chance to mock up the tank and the side panels. And the reason I like to do that is then I can work the paint job to the bike, so I can mask it up, stand back, have a look and check it's all going to work. But all of that is going to get taken care of in episode 9. So that's it for today's episode. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you've learnt something, enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a comment below.